You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe Venosa.
Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Open Agenda. Now, it's been several weeks since we've really had a chance to cover city matters in some depth, but at the last City Council meeting, there were some important developments. And what we are going to do today is dive into that. And of course, we have two great guests who are going to help us understand some of those issues. From Fruitland, Ms. Trish Melvin.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for being here. And old friend of the show, Mr. Michael Langford.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. So I guess the theme, as it were, of the last City Council meeting would be maybe local representation matters or local transparency is important.
Yeah.
Because that came up a lot in the meeting, and specifically with a couple of big issues, particularly the discussion about the annexation on North Shoemaker Drive, and also the issue of council vacancy in the process. And also, down the line, some of the nature of the votes that took place. So what I'd like to do with the time we have today is, Trish, I'd like to bring on Joe Scafino for segment B. Joe was also at the City Council meeting, and he could maybe speak to some of the things that Michael also witnessed, and we can get sort of a consensus on what actually happened. And then I'd like you to come in for segment C as we analyze some other things that occurred during the latter part of the meeting. Is that a good plan, you think?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, you going to hang out with us, Michael, for a bit?
Absolutely. Stick around.
All right, let the fun begin. All right, stick around, and we'll be right back with the next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. With us in the house is Mr. Michael Langford from Salisbury.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back, sir. And Mr. Joe Scafino, also from Salisbury.
Yep.
Thank you. So, three folks from Salisbury, all interested in city issues, and certainly a lot seems to be going on in the city right now.
Yeah, right now they are. One of the things that's taken longer than anticipated, I think, is the council appointment process. They were reviewing that. It's been 6 months. We're seeing the first draft of legislation.
Council vacancy appointment process, Ms. Boucher.
So it is before you tonight for discussion, changes. Feel that we need to be specific with respect to the special election on whether we are allowing mail-in ballots, or was the intent to just, if we're holding a special election, that the votes be cast that day, that you had to show up in person.
I think we said we didn't want the mail-in vote.
Okay.
At all, no.
So I think that I should, before this comes back for first reading, or when you move forward for first reading, or we're coming back for work session, whatever that may be, I will add that in to make it specific that we are not allowing mail-in
Does
ballots.
everybody agree?
I think that we need to actually clarify the appointment process a little bit, as far as we need wording to clarify that this is an open process, that the applicants will submit their resume and, their cover letter, but the public will get it, and it will be a public presentation. That's not in the document, but I did send an email and say I think that we need to clarify, with that being actually in the document, that they will come to a open work session, they will give a presentation.
And we also said that they would do their questioning in front of the public, and if they had anything to say afterward, well, we had some questions like, what made you want to run for office? Then they could do all that right here in front of the citizens.
I do think that you want to nail down those specific details. So what I am recommending is, when we come back to discuss this again, I will have those in what we'll call kind of like a policy and procedure, and that would be adopted via resolution, just like you have a resolution adopting the council rules of order.
By doing this, we're making all the applicants know the process has changed, right?
Yeah.
So this is a very open process. So if you're running, and this is what you want, and you're putting your name in for this, then you should be willing to take
They call.
public calling you and asking you a question because you want to sit in this seat.
I'm glad to see the forethought that went into it, where they're also adding in a clause to the charter of what happens in the case of a vacancy with the mayor's position as well.
Sure.
Which we actually kind of had that back in the pandemic when
former mayor
went into whatever armed forces or whatever.
He was deployed to Djibouti.
But it's like it seems like there's now a clause for there to be a special election in the case of like 6 or 12 months or more remaining in a term to serve. Then we would go to a special election that then the council would order it within 30 days of the vacancy, which would then lead to 90 to 120 day period of a special election.
Okay.
which in my mind, they really should move, because of that 90-day window, they really should make it 15 months so that there's a year of service. Because really, that person's only going to serve 9 months. It's kind of...
Yeah, if it was like right at that cusp,
Yeah,
right? You know,
I would say 15 months, and then that 90 days, they still have a year. And here, it's going to be so short. To go through that, the whole process for just 9 months doesn't make sense at that point.
But I am glad that we'll get a representative that
Absolutely
is representative of
Oh,
the district.
and
this is definitely an improvement.
And they're going to have anybody that wants to run. They're going to appear before the council. They're going to get a few minutes to make a presentation what their interest is.
But the public can be there too?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And the council will have a few questions that for the same for each candidate. So there won't be any cherry picking.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it'll be a fair process, which is absolutely similar to what we did in Pennsylvania in my borough back in the day.
I think one of the most frustrating things about this is that the charter is vague, right? Which is why we're adding in this language. So they could have just all picked the same questions. They didn't need the charter to tell them to do that. They could have just done the decent thing and done that. So when you watch the council meeting, you'll see people like Michelle Gregory, who were and Angela voting for this and being like, oh yeah, we'll all have the same questions. But they didn't when it was a vacancy most recently for the district seat that now sits with Holland, and they asked different questions of candidates like Jermichael.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that fair process. So it's interesting to hear the acknowledgement that there should be this fair process now as they're determining it, but they couldn't exercise that good judgment in the moment.
So that certainly is a big issue regarding concerns about local representation and having a voice in city government. And then the other thing, apparently, is what's going on North Shoemaker.
Yeah, so I've been watching that since I was at the last meeting of the Joint City-County Planning Commission in August of 2025. The North Shoemaker Drive annexation. I was there in the last meeting in August, which was actually the last meeting of the Joint City and County Planning Commission. And it was accurately spoken to already this evening that the actual city employee report and recommendation was to keep to not increase the density. That was their recommendation in infrastructure and development. And again, so that's literally their job is to, it's in the department name, infrastructure. And if the people whose job it is to study the infrastructure and implement plans within the city are telling us that, hey, we can't do this, that should probably supersede individual private business interests or public opinion. For people who are paying attention, people in that development, it is kind of signifying that it doesn't matter to them that if they show up, whether the city, the county, the planning commission, it's especially, when in general people aren't here every week, right? Every time you guys have a meeting. So when they do bother to go out of their routine, you have to think not somebody who's very civically engaged, but your average citizen of Salisbury, they come out, they speak, it means a lot to them. And then it's just, you washed your hands of it. So I recommend that they, nix that and just, again, the people are very reasonable. They're not don't build there, just keep it consistent with the area around it and don't increase the density, especially since the people of the city also said the infrastructure cannot handle it. It was wild to watch them disregard the city staff report from infrastructure and development about keeping the consistent, the zoning changes, the designation. So
This is a resolution to annex certain land to be known as the North Shoemaker Drive annexation, consisting of 12.870 acres, more or less, into the city of Salisbury, and to provide for the terms and conditions of the annexation.
I just want to make sure that it's clear that it's change. All it's doing is changing the density. Correct? For the public.
As proposed? No.
So, yeah, it's changing the density.
And we had, make sure the general public knows that we had met in August.
Yeah.
And then it was one thing, and the developers went from single homes to 60 townhomes.
They were always 60 townhomes.
Always?
Yes.
Okay.
And what's being voted on is the annexation itself.
Of that.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
And the chair votes aye.
Nobody really has an issue with them annexing in this property or with them developing it. But the residents, they have 53 out of 80 something residents of two neighborhoods that are adjacent to the property in question. 53 signatures saying that, they want single family homes not to become townhomes, not to just become like a high traffic rental area.
Correct.
I'm here to strongly urge the council to amend resolution number 3472, which received its first reading earlier tonight. That is the North Shoemaker Drive annexation, to reflect zoning R10S for the following reasons. The purpose of R10S is to preserve the existing character of both newly planned and existing single-family residential areas in order to promote and enhance the quality of life and environmental attributes which are essential parts of this city. If allowed to proceed, the proposed development will both significantly degrade the existing neighborhood and cause incredible damage to Shoemaker Pond. The neighborhood will be degraded through increased traffic flows, the pond from stormwater runoff resulting from the increased impervious surface of the density proposed. The waiver granted by the county council represents a violation in process, both in parts of the joint Salisbury-Wacomico County Planning Commission and the county council. The joint commission ignored their own staff recommendations regarding R10S zoning and voted to increase the density beyond that which even the developer requested. Several requests for infrastructure data, specifically flow test data regarding fire hydrants, have been ignored and not responded to. We can't tell whether there will be a requirement to dig up all of North Shoemaker to provide the increased flow necessary for fire protection for this development. I take no issue with the development. The original staff R10 zoning is fine, allows single-family homes, maintains neighborhood character. Please restore public's faith that local government can be responsive to community needs and not just chase increased tax revenue. Please amend this resolution.
I'm here in support of my neighbor Ken, who just spoke, and also the 50-plus other neighbors who are quite concerned about Resolution 3472. Just to be clear, we do request that you amend the resolution to reflect zoning R10S. To Ken's point, we were quite shocked to learn only a short time ago that of the possibility that a highly dense development might be built in a farm field immediately adjacent to our community, and that these plans included direct vehicle access into and through our neighborhood. We do appreciate the need for new housing, as Ken noted, but we believe that it should be at scale, consistent with surrounding neighborhoods. We also understand that the city's own planning staff recommended zoning R10S for this property in the August 2025 Salisbury Infrastructure and Development Staff Report.
That's why these processes actually exist on the local level, is so that people that live here have a say over what the future looks like in 10, 20, 30 years, what they're going to be living with. And it's just, again, disheartening to see that be disregarded, both the city staff and residents here. And it's like, well, this is part of the voter disengagement. This is part of, people not wanting to show up.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a 4-1 vote? I think it was. I believe Councilwoman DeShiel voted in the negative.
Okay.
She did. You're correct.
Okay.
Yep.
But-
Which is interesting because that's not even Councilwoman DeShiel's district.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I believe that the ball is still in Salisbury Council's court. So Salisbury Council, in my opinion, can still designate that as a R10S. Okay? And again, I was at the Planning Commission meeting back in August, and I've also been to the county meetings where this issue came up most recently. And the developer himself said, look, I want to do townhomes because they're going to be more affordable. Fair point. But he also said, I can sell them for $250,000 to $280,000. He says, or I can build 56 single-family homes, but I'm going to have to sell them for $350,000 and up. So he made it sound like he was amenable to do either one. And Salisbury Council can say, They're going to change the 10S, build the 56 single-family homes. And again, that ties into, we talked about the electoral turnout and how we have 71% renters and only 29% homeowners.
Yeah.
We need more single-family homeowners, that people have skin in the game.
Yeah.
So, and again, that'd be a win-win for everybody.
That's what's so surprising to me, is that you'll have council members who opine about, again, the lack of not only voter engagement, but they will say, supposedly, that having such a high rate of rental is not having such a high rate of rentalship is such a bad thing.
Exactly.
And then they vote on policies that worsen that.
If you're not listening to the city staff, if you're not listening to residents in that area, then what is this? You're not listening to the developer who's like, hey, do what you want. I'm amenable. I'm going to build what I can build based on what you guys tell me.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And he's not aggressive about it.
No.
I mean, he has come in and spoken about it, but I will say that developer, I've seen him several times. He's invested in his investment. Makes sense that he shows up.
Yes.
But he does not grandstand the way that some other local developers
Exactly,
might, right?
yes.
He is following the process, and he will comply with whatever that process is determined to be. What's wild is to watch the people who actually have the ability to hold these people accountable.
Yeah, pass the buck again.
Kicking the can.
And I'll say this, we talk about lack of local representation and maybe a lack of interest, but there's plenty of people in that neighborhood now who are interested in things, and they've been showing up, and they will be showing up, it seems, for a lot. And so
I think they're likely to remember who, spoke up for them and who voted.
And who
for
voted,
them.
both at the city and county level,
Yeah.
frankly. I think, Michael, to your point, this refers to the broader trend of not only does local representation matter, but being able to have a voice and transparency in the process of getting that representation matters. And there's some other things, right, that also happen that kind of...
Yeah, sometimes you don't have a say, right? And so,
Right.
like, two things that were happening last night that were just, moving things forward that business has to be done is the removal of timing restrictions on political signage.
Yeah.
Which is apparently they have to do to be compliant with some Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah.
I did not get majorly into the Supreme Court thing, but I mean the obvious concern with like litter and just
Now you have
and
to
all
live
that.
with the political sign forever. it would seem.
Yeah, and people can, and then the other aspect was we had the first reading of a large family child care ordinance, which apparently the Maryland General Assembly passed something, I believe, last year. So now we're just getting our local legislation to like comply with that finding, right?
So-
but people don't have a say about that. We just have to do that. So then when you have a say about the
Zoning,
vacancy process or zoning, annexation.
It's a great irony.
Then those are also, it seems, to be being disregarded by some people in local office.
Yeah. Other things, of course, happen, though, at the city council meeting. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to come back in segment C. I'd actually like to bring on Trish Melvin from Fruitland. And, Michael, perhaps you, Trish, and I can talk a little bit about one other thing that occurred that I think raises questions about transparency and representation.
Yeah.
So if you're cool sticking around for a little bit?
Absolutely.
Cool. Mr. Scavino? You mind taking a hike? And
Sayonara.
Sayonara. All right, thanks for showing up.
All right.
All right, and please stick around for our next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Sticking around with us is Mr. Michael Langford from Salisbury.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. And coming back with us is Ms. Trish Melvin from Fruitland. Hello. Thanks for being here, Trish. So we've looked at, obviously, some major issues happening within the city regarding the annexation on North Shoemaker and the concerns about sort of other aspects of city government with regard to the vacancy process. But something else sort of happened during the meeting, and it was kind of related to, I guess, not just the behavior, but sort of how, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the lack of consistency or
maybe a new consistency.
a new consistency. Can you set this up for us, Michael?
So I live in District 5 in the city. So my representative is Angela Blake, and one of the things I witnessed that immediately, just raised a red flag for me, as she's a representative of people, is she voted against community development block grant funding. So they had Sandy Green, the director of finance in the city, come in, and in the agenda packet there was an over 60-page document outlining where millions of dollars will come into our area.
It was very detailed. It was very detailed,
and fund these different organizations.
Good evening, Council. I'm here on behalf of OGA, which is the grant administrator in our office. Before you tonight, you have a resolution for the 2026 CDBG Action Plan. The City of Salisbury is qualified as an entitlement community according to the HUD regulations and is entitled to receive an annual allotment of CDBG funds. For FY 2026 program year, the amount of the CDBG funds to be received is $367,754.
I read through the plan, and there was several questions, and I prepared something I'm going to have put into the minutes. There's broad goal. There's a lot of really good goals in there for Salisbury. Emphasizes on priorities such affordable housing and community development, but there seems to be a lack of clear numeric targets, timelines, benchmark, and measurable deliverables. I don't think there's a connection between some of the data and the action. Community engagement concerns, because there has been no public comment on it. One of the things that is concerning about that is figuring out to have a stronger ongoing engagement. And I know we've struggled with that, even when we were doing the housing meetings and just following up with the comprehensive plan, and having ongoing engagement using tools as quarterly updates, using a dashboard, public scorecards, and routine progress reporting. Those are some things that will really help with community engagement. When we have a big document such as this, and we had 2 public hearings, there was no comment, that says a lot also. It's a really good document. I like a lot of the graphs. I like a lot of the maps in it, and I think there's a lot of good goals, but there's no objectives in how we're actually reaching these goals. Who, what, when, where, and who's responsible? How is it going to be delivered?
So you're saying nay to the grant, to the CDBG funding?
Those are my thoughts about it. I think it could be reworked, and I just explained.
Yeah, I understand what you said, but
Okay.
that's a hell of a lot of goals for $267,000, and then to say nay to it means you go to zero. So I'm not sure where I'm not following your path.
That's okay.
Okay.
You don't need to. I hear what Mayor Taylor is saying. I just think that if there's good things going on about it, nobody knows about it. And that is, I didn't even know about what some of the things you were explaining. No, I just think we need more reporting and more engagement.
Do we have consensus to move this forward?
Yes. Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Nay.
Ms. Blake raised an objection because there weren't steadfast plans, and it's like, well, this is funding for other organizations that make the plan. Like, we're not handing Habitat for Humanity, right? We're handing them money. We're not handing them how to do their jobs.
Right.
We're as the government, you're like facilitating the flow of resources into different community organizations that are good stewards that address issues within your community. It's standard procedure, you know what I mean? Like, this happens every year.
And she's voted on this before, too.
And she's voted, and it's just been a new trend of her being an oppositional force, and voting nay on, things that are pretty, like, routine matters of finance in the city. So she voted against community block grant funding, ordinance number 2999, which was just establishing the levy for the general fund. So it's moving the budget into the next phase, for them to review. They've had their budget sessions. It's just typical. She voted against that and moving the budget forward. But she didn't give like an alternative of like, what are we going to do instead of this?
So that's my question. I wasn't there, and was anything offered that would be acceptable before?
No, she basically, her responses when she did respond to any of this was she has valid concerns. And so she's going to vote no because of such and such valid concerns. And her espoused concerns, I'm like, could be valid, but they might not necessitate a vote of no, being that she's that vote is, not really her vote. It's the people's vote. You're a representative. Like, when it comes to, other people in the city, like, yeah, they're good stewards, or they're supposed to represent us in like theory, but this person is literally a publicly elected official that's supposed to represent the people. So it's like, is she getting letters that's telling people from constituents? She's not getting one from me that says don't accept community development block grant funding,
Or even
from the state.
or don't vote the budget forward. That to me is like the most kind of surprising thing to be against.
And if you watch the budget session, she's not speaking up or giving a bunch of different alternatives or it would be fine. Like, that is what the process is for.
Sure.
The check and balance, like, they approve, the mayor sets a line item, the council approves it or not. But
Right.
but if you don't approve, but there's a valid need that the initial line item is for, and you want to amend that, then you need to be able to give the administration like an alternative.
Well, I mean, I understand holding up a process until you're satisfied with getting the full information for the citizens and for the council. Is that what's going on?
I mean, I feel like since they had their budget sessions, right, that's the time in which to espouse these concerns. The community development block grant funding, her comments on that just amounted to there isn't an actual action plan here. There's just like I guess there's objectives, but there aren't goals. I think her point was, to be generous, was more that there wasn't like a specified, way in which these monies would be spent. And so she's like, how do I know if I want to give this much to Habitat if I don't know what they're going to do with it? And it's like, that's not the process, however.
So is this an annual community?
Yes.
So it was handled a little bit different this year, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
her voting
Okay.
no is just, it's just a very standard pro forma. It's pretty much, I mean, it's kind of like when there's budget amendments for the fire department or the police department, it's always a yay from everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Yeah.
ever against them receiving money. And the same thing with community development block grant funding. Like, it's kind of the bread and butter of like local government as far as, outside of taxpayer revenue.
Well, speaking of that, that leads us to the other nay vote that was put up on the water.
So yeah, then Ordinance 3000 is an increase on the water bills of 2.5%. But if we go back to the prior 2 years, last year it was a 9% increase. 2 years ago it was a 10% increase. Both of which Ms. Blake could vote in the affirmative for. So now it's this modest 2.5% increase, which is more in line of what you would expect to see from a local municipality, and there's just this vote of nay.
Ordinance number 3000, this is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury to amend the water and sewer rates to increase rates by 2.5% and making said changes effective for all bills dated October 1, 2026 and thereafter, before you tonight for first reading. Will be followed by a public hearing and second reading.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
And the chair votes aye, 4-1.
No explanation.
No, I don't remember one being given for that particular vote.
Has she become a fiscal conservative of late?
And that's the funny thing is, like, this isn't even fiscal conservatism. It's like anti-money, anti-balanced budget, anti-funding. You know what I mean? I mean, that's it. It's like if she was looking for more accountability or transparency in the process, this isn't how to go about doing it. I wouldn't say.
But nonetheless, she was in the minority, and the votes
And they all
okay.
carried.
All right.
It was just an odd trend to see from like local representation. I've never seen anybody say no to state funds,
Especially someone who's said yes for years and years and years.
especially when they've said yes for years and years. And it's like regardless of political affiliation,
Yeah.
you won't find.
It's not a partisan issue.
Yeah, no. Like again, we're funding like nonprofits in the area with this money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're meeting the needs of people here, which everybody. I think if you talk person on the right or the left in the local government, they all see that there's needs within our communities that need to be addressed, and none of them are like wholesale against state funds or something. Oh, we can't accept this taxpayer money. This isn't. Everybody wants to fix the sidewalks.
So let me ask the final question to kind of bring this all together. Why do you think this particular council member is voting in this way on these issues right now?
I can only label it obstructionist. I can't venture a reason as to why.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, there may be reasons that will become apparent in the future, in the near future. We don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, and again, it is still
Well-
early in the budget season too, so maybe
And then that
more.
becomes about transparency at that point. Communication at some point is a component of transparency. And if you're not fully explaining what your objections are and getting that across to constituents, that's just concerning.
Well, and again, I think that's why we all do what we do, is we want the public to be as informed as possible on the things that matter most to them locally. And whether it's at the county or city level, that's what we try to do.
Absolutely.
So, well, on that note, thank you both for coming in again and giving us information on this. We'll keep attuned to these matters in the future. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. And we'll be back with a new episode of Open Agenda very soon. Take care.